Hey everybody, welcome to a very interesting episode, and this is something kind of new to me for what I'm doing. You could, I guess, call this episode obscure tips, tricks, and how-tos. I go over certain pain points that I've experienced, and I hope that me going over in detail of the things that I've experienced and how I got past them will help one of you guys out. So I do hope you guys enjoy this type of video. Definitely leave a comment down below if any of the items on the list help at any point. Also, please do not hesitate to let me know if there is something that I did wrong or possibly could do differently to make it a lot easier or more efficient. And also, I will have my Discord linked down below, either in the description or the pinned comment. And I will have a couple of other items in the pinned comment and also the description from throughout this video. So make sure you keep your eyes out for that. And again, if you liked the video, smash the like button, subscribe, and don't forget to hit the little bell for future episodes. And with that said, let's go ahead and jump right into the video. So this one is actually going to be covering the roots mod. I haven't seen anyone really go in depth into this one, and I know this kind of confuses a lot of people, especially since I was one of them. This one I had to actually look up because it wasn't really notable as to how this is supposed to work. Because if we go here into the runic tablet, which if you want to make the runic tablet, it's a super simple craft. It just requires any type of stone variant, 3 seeds or 3 wheat seeds, and an old root. And that will allow you to make the runic tablet, which is just the Roots Classic book, I guess you could say. So once you have it, you can right click and it will bring up this fancy looking GUI. And then what you want to do is you want to click on one of these arrows. I usually just click on the left one. And then this brings me to the rituals page. And the crystal staff is the only one we really care about out of this one. So if we click on that and we come to this screen, this gives us a diagram of what it's supposed to look like, but doesn't really tell us what we need. It does give us, the items that we need. It does tell us what we need for the certain aspects of things. But if you could see, it doesn't tell you anything about any of the items that are being used in the ritual. So I had to kind of look that up, and it took me a little bit of time to find something that was good enough to showcase. So with that being said, this is why I'm actually going over this, is to hopefully, if anybody was in the same boat as I, would be able to utilize this to help them progress further so that they could get the crystal staff. Now, getting the crystal staff early on, especially in all the mods 10, it's a good thing to get because you could actually accelerate different blocks with it. It's kind of like having a time wand or a time in the bottle. It's just this is through the roots mod. So let's go ahead and set this up. And what I like to do is I start with the altar. I put it down, and then this kind of gives me an idea of where I need to be. Now, there was some blocks on here that wasn't named, which is going to be the incense brazier or brazier. And what I've noticed is it doesn't work properly if it's on like the sides of it. But what I did find is that it works pretty good when it's adjacent to the altar. So I like to put them on the corner just like so. And basically, once you have this layout, we could then actually come back here and look at this diagram, because we know that that's the altar, and we know that it's 2 blocks away or 2 blocks in between where we need to put this first item all the way around. And then it does, a 3x3 kind of out around that. So we know that it's going to be up to here. Now, these items that are going to be on the outside, they are called the mundane standing stones. That is what we're going to be putting down right now. And then after that is the attuned standing stones. They're a little bit taller than the mundane. These go on the outside of the 4 different sides. So to make these, click right there. To make these, it's just stone with stone brick and then a block of lapis. That again is for the mundane. Now to do the attuned, we want to take a look. That is with any other type of stone, nether brick, and a diamond in the center. So again, the crafts aren't too bad, and you're going to need 8 of the mundane standing stones and 4 of the attuned standing stones. So let's go ahead and get the rest of this down. So we know from the altar it was 2 blocks in between, and then we place the mundane. So we'll go ahead and do that for each one. And then we're going to come out to fill in the corners as well. Because again, it's a 3x3 for these things. And then with this roots mod, I believe that's where these green particles are coming from. So if we go ahead and go back into the runic tablet, you could take a look. We have these now set down. And we know that we're going to have to skip a block and place these attuned standing stones. And again, it's on each side. So we'll go ahead and skip a block and put it down right here. And same thing all the way around. All right. So that is pretty much it. This ritual is done. Now all we would have to do is get the items needed. So these 4 items, which is the coal block or the block of coal, the birch bark, acacia bark, and the verdant sprig, these are the items that go into these incense braziers. And the way to get the birch and the acacia bark is you're going to use the bark knife from the roots mod, which is just some saplings, a plank, and a stick. So that is the craft to do it. And then you just come over to a tree. You kind of see I did one to that tree right there, but you just come up to the tree and you right click on it, and it will strip the log and it will give you the bark in return. So let's go ahead and place these in. So we just put 1 in each. And again, I do apologize if I'm pronouncing brazier wrong. That word is kind of difficult for me to pronounce. I know it has, there's a couple of pronunciations for that word for different areas of the world. So I do apologize about that. So once we get all 4 of those items into each one of these, we can then focus on the items that are required for the casting altar, which again is just a block of diamond, a stick, and blaze powder. And you just want to right click that onto the altar, and you can see that is there now. Now, once you're at this point, you're pretty much ready to start the ritual. You'll get a flint and steel, and you will light, not yourself on fire, but you'll light the incense for each one. And then I think you have to right click. Nope. Put that back. Shift right click on the altar. And then you'll see the animation happen. And then once this is completed, it will then pop out the crystal staff. And there you have it. That is how you get the crystal staff using the roots mod. It's super simple mod, just not a lot of information or detail on how to set up the ritual. So I do hope that this helps whoever is in need. So that will be it for the roots. And we will go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, and here's the next one. This is going to be more of a tip or some information, not so much of a how-to. I mean, there will be kind of how-tos on how to get some of these items, but it's mainly just tips on, you know, the best foods you can have even starting off early game. Because you can find a lot of these trees out in the world, or, you know, once you do have a little bit of resources, you can then craft some of these items. So, one of which, if you could get your hands on like an avocado tree, which you can easily, you know, once you unlock the market here, you can easily get an avocado tree. It's going to be right here. It's the avocado sapling, and it costs 1 emerald. If you get one of those, and if you happen to stumble across, um, an enchant, or even if you go through easy villagers for this enchant, there's an enchant called Nature's Blessing. What this is it's like having bone meal on your hoe. So pretty much like, take this rose bush for instance. If I right click on it, you could see it's basically bone milling the rose bush, and it's giving me the results, the extra rose bushes. So that's what Nature's Blessing does. So when you're using it on a tree that has, like avocado, for instance, you could get a bunch of avocados, which then you could actually craft that down into something called mayo. So there's a couple of variants that you could do for this. You could use an egg, you can use an avocado, banana, um, but the avocado is probably the easiest because the trees are pretty much everywhere in all the mods 10. And then you're going to want to get a juicer. A juicer is just some terracotta, which terracotta, of course, is just clay smelted. So that is extremely easy to get, especially, if you just jump into a river, you should easily be able to find clay. But if you combine the juicer, which does not get consumed in this craft, only the avocado does, you get mayo. Now, if you see, mayo has a times 11 saturation. Extremely good for early game. Now, once you start getting resources coming in, emeralds and diamonds and such, you could get an apple tree. Or if you have apples already coming in an abundance, you could actually make what's called a relic apple. And I'm using that as we speak. I actually use relic apples a lot because of how good they are. So if we take a look at the relic apples, you can see here that it does a full row of food plus a 16 time saturation. And the best thing about this is you could continuously eat it regardless of your saturation and hunger level. This is perfect for when you go into those long mining sessions and you're using a lot of ultimine, which is very heavy on the hunger. So if you combine this with, say, like a backpack with an auto feeder or a feeding upgrade, this becomes very powerful. You could pretty much mine endlessly with ultimine, and it's wonderful. Now, this is also good for when it comes to those boss fights, because in the boss fights, if you have this in a backpack with a feeding upgrade and you have it set correctly, it will continuously feed you these relic apples the moment you start taking any type of damage. And what's good about that is this actually gives you a couple of buffs. This will give you resistance 2, haste 2, and strength 2, which is a +6 attack. So you're getting a +20% attack speed, a +6 attack damage, and then you're getting resistance 2, which is extremely powerful, especially when you're going against the bosses. So this is probably one of the best early foods you could have that could easily get you into mid to late game with. And then once you get, into bees, or you get into the mystical agriculture seeds and stuff like that, and you get more like all the modium coming in, then you could switch over to, say, like the Allthemodium carrot. Now, the thing about this one is it's pretty insane. So it's a carrot with Allthemodium nuggets. This is pretty much late game. You don't have any issue using Allthemodium. You got it coming in an abundance, and you just want something that will keep you full and fully saturated as long as possible. Because this thing is insane. This gives you 2 rows of hunger instantly, plus 160 times saturation. This thing is nuts. For just 8 nuggets and a carrot, this thing is awesome to have, especially in the late game, and you don't care about, how much Allthemodium you are using, especially when you have it coming in with the bees, because with the bees, you're actually getting the Allthemodium in nugget form. So if you see over here, I have a beehive full of allthemodium bees, and these are making my allthemodium metals. So allthemodium, vibranium, and unobtainium, and it is doing quite wonderful, I would say. Currently, I have 45,000 of allthemodium, so those carrots at this point are extremely easy to make, and they will pretty much last you for as long as you need them. So that is just a quick couple of tips on best foods to get from starting to kind of getting into mid stage gaming, all the way up until late gaming. Some of the best foods you could possibly have. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. All right, guys, and we are back with another one. And this one is actually one of my top favorites, and it is the Eternal Water Block. Ever since I discovered this thing, I've been using it anywhere and everywhere that requires water and a constant supply of it. Matter of fact, in another tip that I'll be going over is this one right here. And if I go ahead and mine down a little bit, you can see I'm actually using the water block here as well. So again, I'm using this anywhere and everywhere that I can, and it's a super simple craft. So what you want to do is you want to create a weather container, and you want to make sure it's the empty one, and it's just a dark gem, a glass bottle, and sugar. That will get you the empty weather container. Then once you get that, let me go ahead and make one here real quick. Once you do that, you will then want to go out and find yourself an Evil Craft tower. It is a tower that's usually found near like a riverbank. It's usually made out of cobblestone and some cobblestone like fences, so it looks like a tower, and it has a block in the middle that shoots up a green beam, just like this one. This is the Evil Craft tower that I was talking about. So you want to fly over here, and then basically with your empty weather container, you want to just throw it into the green beam, and you will see a particle effects and the charge at the top. And then once that is done, you will get back the weather container. Let me go ahead and fly away a little bit so that this effect goes away. And this one is no longer empty. This one is actually called My Only Sunshine. Now with this one, what you'll want to do is craft this with 2 water buckets, which will give you the weather container when the rain begins to fall. So let me go ahead and craft 2 water buckets, and then we could craft this one real quick. So now that we have the weather container when the rain begins to fall, we'll want to go ahead and create the next one. And this is what will give you the Eternal Water Block, which if we go ahead and take a look at the craft, it's just glass pane, a dark block, and the weather container that we have. The dark block is just dark gems in a 3x3. So this one's super simple to make. And then we want to put the weather container here in the middle. And then we want to get some glass panes. Let me go ahead and make some here real quick. And you surround it just like that. That will give you 4 of these blocks, the Eternal Water Blocks. And it does say an infinite source of water. This water block is super powerful. Unlike the sink, this outputs at a high rate. With the sink, you have to have integrative dynamics in order to be able to pump out an insane amount of water for things like the fissile reactor, where you have to have a high supply of water at a constant, steady rate. The Eternal Water Block does that. Now, unfortunately, this is not available in all the mods 10 to the sky. However, it is available here in all the mods 10. So let me go back home. And that concludes the Eternal Water Block little tip here. I absolutely love this thing. Like it makes things so much easier. And you don't have to use any pipes or anything. You could just stick it to whatever you want to supply water to, and it just works. I love this thing. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. I'll see you guys there. Okay, and welcome back to another one. So this one is actually pretty interesting. So what I'm going to want to talk to you about is a weapon that you could get fairly early on, but not too early, because it will require some, getting into AE2. You're going to want some Fluix dust, some charged Certus, and you want to be able to get some of the things that you can, like the ME terminal, the ME drive, and the controller. But once you have the ability to, and you have some resources, you're going to want to make the matter cannon. Now, the matter cannon is not too bad on resources to make. It just requires some iron, a formation core, an energy cell, which is just some quartz glass, Certus quartz or charged, and some Fluix dust. Super simple stuff, especially if you're getting into AE2. You should already have some of these things on hand. And then the 4K ME storage component, which is again just quartz glass, redstone, calculation processor, and the 1Ks, which is just logic, Certus quartz, and redstone. Super simple craft to make, but once you make it, you're going to want to make an ME terminal, a controller, and an ME drive. And of course, a cable to connect your terminal to this little setup. This is on its own network, basically, so this is not connected to my main network. This is in its own little domain, pretty much. But you're going to want to take your matter cannon and put it inside the drive, just like so. Now, when you do this, you'll be able to open up the terminal, and you will see, like, I already have some stuff in here. So the gold nuggets, this is what you're going to want to use as ammo. This is what you're going to be shooting out. This is supposed to be the highest damaged, easy to get kind of resource. So again, you don't need a lot of it because it will kind of go in a long ways, but you do want enough to where you won't run out kind of instantly. So once you have that filled up with gold nuggets, you could then pull it back out. And let me go ahead and put all this random stuff away. Now, if you have the ability to make the portable cell workbench, or even the cell workbench, doesn't have to be the portable, but if you make this guy here, which is just a calculation processor, some wool, iron, and a chest, this will allow you to then put the matter cannon into the cell slot up here, and you can give it some upgrades. So in this case, the upgrade that we want to give it is the acceleration upgrade. This should give it more power. And then you could pull it back out and put it back into your hotbar. So now that we got this taken care of, let's go to the end and let's have some target practice with the Enderman. So you could see it's fairly strong, especially when you get those accelerator cards in there. Sometimes it's, a one-hit kill. Sometimes it takes a couple of hits. But, I mean, you don't have to be up close and personal with the Enderman. It works pretty good at a distance. And it's fairly accurate. You just point and click. There's no, like, any kind of drop. And I'm not sure exactly how far away you could be. Because it goes pretty far, as you can see. So yeah, no, I mean, this thing is great, especially when you're fighting against the Wither or the Warden. You could kill them easily with this. You don't have to be up close and personal. You could be pretty far away and you could still do some damage. And this goes also for the Ender Dragon. You could kill the Ender Dragon with this. You could even shoot out all the crystals. I just fought the Ender Dragon earlier, so I did it without destroying any of the ender crystals or the end crystals. And you know, you can pretty much just take care of these with this as well, and it's super accurate. You know, it's a great tool to have, especially for the boss fights, because it does a lot of damage and you don't have to be up close and personal. So that is the matter cannon. I wanted to kind of show this off and give you guys an option other than, you know, the standard sword and axe kind of combo, or even Ars Nouveau's attack spells, because there's many different ways you could have attack spells, or you know, how you do damage to a mob. And I just wanted to add this one in, you know, to give you even more options. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next one. See you guys there. Okay, guys. So this one is going to be kind of a doozy, because this one gives so many people a headache that I feel like this would be something that will be beneficial for many. And it is the industrial foregoing potion brewer, especially with automating it. Now, let me go ahead and head back up and go over to the mining dimension where I have mine set up. Now, I actually had this set up temporarily because I was helping a friend out on how to automate this, and I figured, you know what, I will make a guide so that this would be available all around. So what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to get yourself an ME wireless connector, an extended, no, it doesn't even have to be extended, it just really depends on how many patterns or potions you're going to want to have on autocraft. So you could even use the regular pattern provider, that's fine. And then you're going to also want an interface. So the way this works is as follows. I am using the wireless connector because I don't like using a lot of wires. So even if this was in the overworld, I would still be using a wireless connector. It just makes it so much easier. And then I would have the pattern provider down, and then I'd make sure it is pointing into the potion brewer. Then I would set the ME interface next to it, and the ME interface is actually holding two different things. It is supplying the potion brewer with blaze powder, and it is supplying the potion brewer with water. So this will always be in this system until you remove this block, of course. So another thing you're going to need are add-ons. I recommend doing it as high of an add-on as you can. At least tier 2 or better. I'm using tier 4 in this case, and it makes it almost like immediate, like super quick, and I enjoy this. Now, once you have everything here placed in, and then of course you're going to want to make sure that, see, I did this cable because I wanted to make sure that the interface is connected to the system, so it shows device online, so then it could pull in this stuff from the system. So if you, depending on how you configure your setup, this little cable is not necessary. Again, it's just so that I could give the interface a channel and it work. All right, so once you have this set up and you have your add-ons placed in, another recommendation that you can do that I've seen is if you get a bucket, an empty bucket, and you place that here in this little blue square, this will help with the bottle input. However, I haven't noticed any bottles trying to come into this little area right here, so I don't ever really bother, but that is a tip. If you do see bottles coming in here, just place a bucket there, and it will stop doing that. Next is going to be the pattern itself. The pattern, matter of fact, you are going to need an advanced pattern provider just so you could use this pattern. Let me grab out my other tool. It's the advanced pattern encoder, this thing, so I could set up the pattern, which I will show you the pattern. So this is to make regeneration 2. So this is needed for Uriel, for Forbidden and Arcanus, It's part of the needed resource. So I have this on autocraft so that I don't have to worry about waiting for the Uriel to be passively gained. I could just craft up the bottles of it and just force it into the forge. So the way I have this set up is I have netherwort, gas tier, glowstone, and then 3 bottles. You'll have to manually make these because it will not come in here on its own like this. Actually, if you try and add the regeneration 2 potion from JEI, it will give you just the glowstone and the regeneration 1 potions, and that is not what you want. So you want to make sure you are on processing pattern, and you want to make sure this is set up from left to right. So depending on how long your potion is and how many steps it requires, you're going to go left to right. And then when you go down, you'll be starting from here, left to right, and then same thing, left to right. And then the last thing is going to be your glass bottles. So here, this is just a 3-step. So netherwort to make the awkward potion, gas tier to make the generation 1 potion, and then the glowstone dust to make the generation 2 potion. So that is everything I have in order. Now, once that pattern is created, you're going to want to take your advanced pattern encoder, open that up, and place your pattern up here in the upper right slot. You want to leave the netherwort, the gas tier, and the glowstone as the target the face adjacent to advanced pattern provider. The reason being is because we want the items to be pushed into the brewer, the potion brewer, by the pattern provider, which is perfectly fine. However, the glass bottles is a different case. You're going to want to have this pushed in to whatever the right side of the machine is. So how I determined that was I come to the face of the machine, and then I look to the right because it's going to have to come in from the right side of the machine. And I see that is south. So I am now looking south, which tells me to make sure that the bottles get pushed in, targeting the south face of the machine. Once you have that set up, this pattern is good and done. You could toss this into the pattern provider. And now what you can do is you could start requesting these to be created. And if I come in here, you can see that it is working. It is making the generation 2 potions. As you can see, it has these in the correct order. And as long as you have the tier 2 and up, this should work. If you don't have any add-ons, the only thing that this will do is it will just make water bottles, and that's it. So you have to have the add-ons tier 2 or higher. Higher the better, as you can see that this is instant. And again, depending on how many steps it requires for the potion as well, but it should be good all the way up to at least 5 to 6 steps. So you can see that is coming in nice and easy. And that is pretty much all you need to do to have this automated and ready to go. And remember, it's mainly going to be the bottles that usually are the issue, or the add-ons. As long as you have the potion created correctly, where you have the items from left to right, and then your bottles in there, and you set it to the right amount, 3 glass bottles, and then you want to make sure you set the actual output to 3 potions of whatever kind you're making. And that's pretty much it for the industrial foregoing potion brewer. It was a headache. It still is a headache, but I hope that this makes it a lot easier to understand and to automate. Well, thank you so much on that, and I will go ahead and move on to the next one. So I will see you guys there. All right, and we are back with another one. This one's going to be kind of interesting, as this is going to be involving AE2. Once you get to the point where resources is not an issue, especially when it surrounds AE2 and the storage crafting, what I would recommend doing is getting away from the functional storage compacting drawers. I know some of you've probably experienced it where you will run into an issue where you try and autocraft something and it will give you an error saying that the system cannot use this item due to some conflict. Well, what I'm about to show you is a way to get around that, and still have your items, compacted. So let me go ahead and let's grab this one, the netherite ingot. I'll grab this one out of my system. You're going to want either a cell workbench or the portable cell workbench. I recommend doing the portable cell workbench because it's just easier to have. What you're going to also need is this card right here, the compression card. You're going to need one of those. And then you're also going to need to have a mega decompression module on the system. It doesn't have to be, on the drives or anything like that, but it does have to be a part of your system, just so that it could break down the items while the compression card compresses all the items. So you have the best of both worlds. It will compress and decompress for you without any issues. So let's go ahead and set this up. So what you're going to need is a mega bulk item storage cell. And the way to craft that is the mega bulk storage component, which is the accumulation processors, some skystone, 2/3 power spatial component, and a 1M mega storage component. Now, this thing holds max int of any item you put into it because it only holds one item. So it's really amazing to have for that reason alone. But to have the extra ability to where you could have it compress into block form or even decompress into, say, down to nuggets is just an added bonus. So you're going to want to grab yourself one of these mega bulk components, storage components, and then you're going to want to grab an item storage cell. And then you will craft these together. So it's netherite ingots, skystone dust, and vibrant quartz glass with the mega bulk storage component in the middle. So once you have that, you could then get your portable cell workbench or workbench, whichever one you have, open it up and go ahead and put in your cell up in the corner. And then you want to make sure you put in whatever item you're filtering this cell for. In this case, it's netherite ingot. So I put the netherite ingot right here in this first slot. And then what you're going to want to do is you're going to add this compression card right up here. This will open up another button here off to the side. Now this is a bulk compression cutoff. This will tell it to say, hey, stop at 4 times block, or stop at, you could go as low as, a block of netherite or a 1 time, or you could even go all the way up to a 9 time block of netherite. So once you have this set to where you want it, which I normally set it to about 4 time, I then go ahead and grab the cell card out of the workbench, and then I go ahead and I slap this back into my system. And now you can see where it says compression enabled, cutoff is block of netherite 4 time. So let's go ahead and take a look at our netherite. So you can see here, it is slowly making it as it is compressing, and it will only go up to a 4 time. So if we go block of netherite and then 4x. So you can see here, it already broke down the 2.2 million ingots into the 4 time netherite blocks. Now, that's cool. You can have these blocks. But another cool feature of this is if we go back to netherite, sometimes you won't have any of these ingots left, and it still looks like it's still kind of breaking them down as it goes, which is perfectly fine. But let's just say, for instance, 2 time. you can see here that there's only 3, but when you try and pull it out, you actually get a whole stack. Because of this module, it will break down the higher stacks into the lower ones of whatever you're trying to pull out, and it will give you a full stack as long as it's there. You put that back in, and then same thing goes for the nuggets. You can see here at the bottom, if I look it up, nuggets. So for the nuggets, you're going to want to right click to pull out, and that will then eventually give you the ability to pull them out. Let me see if shift click works. Shift click works as well. You can shift click it out. So there's a couple ways you could pull the nuggets out. And yeah, so that is the AE2 bulk storage, the bulk item storage cells with compression and decompression enabled. These are a beautiful thing to have, because then you will never have to really worry about any kind of conflict in your system that gets, that comes about with the compacting drawers. I've experienced it quite a bit, and once I switched over to this, I never had that issue again, and it's just a beautiful thing. So with that being said, let's go ahead and move on to the next one. See you guys there. All right, everybody. So this is going to be kind of like an interesting tip. This is to kind of help progress with certain things, whether it be resources, fluids, or, just trying to get XP so you could get the enchants or even the apothic gear and stuff like that. So what I'm going to be going over is mob farms. There are different types for different reasons. Let me take you around to some of the ones that I have. So if we come back down here, this mob farm that I set up was actually set up for 2 reasons. One of which was for liquid meat and pink slime. I had this continuously going and then importing back into the system so that I would always have pink slime on hand for industrial foregoing. Now, I did stop that because I ended up getting a pink slime bees set up. So this I won't have to continuously run that farm to get pink slime. I have it coming in through the bees. So I went ahead and I stopped that farm. So again, it just, if you could get to a point where you could have this stuff either on a bee, or if you have a farm set up, the farm is good. The only problem is eventually you'll start feeling that lag from all the entities coming in, because it is fast. The farm that I had here is pretty fast because it was tick accelerated by redstone. Underneath I have cogs that are set up to an RF timer, just like this one right here, where it's going into the cog and it's powering this. So this was a good way of getting around the 20 tick limit on some of these machines. But I have all the cogs under each one of these cursed dirt. And then I have this powering the cog block. You just need one and it will power the whole bunch because they're all connected. Which then I have this set to 2, which is a tenth of a second. So it moves quick and it spawns mobs extremely quick. So that was for liquid meat and pink slime. I also set this up so I could get apothic gear or apothic gems, because I was trying to get these so that I could get, my armor all set up. So that's why the advanced clicker is here, because I had a sword set up with looting and everything to help with that. So let me go ahead and come back up here to the top. So this one over here, this one was strictly set up for XP. If I go ahead and remove this cog block, you can see here that I have a very powerful sword with looting and ancient of the knowledge and everything, knowledge of the ages 3. So basically the looting and I don't have loot pinata on this one, but even if I did, that would be so much better, because what happens is knowledge of the ages 3 will convert all the mob drops into XP. And then I had an XP holder from Just Iris thing collect all the XP that drops from here. So the the mobs that I have in here are pretty simple, just like a creeper. I have spider, I have an enderman, and I have actually I think I have a couple of endermen in there. So yeah, I have some mobs in there. When they get killed, their loot becomes XP and it goes into an XP holder, which I moved because I was actually upgrading my gear with the apothic stuff, and it requires a lot of XP. And then I have this mob farm over here. This one's kind of interesting, and I know this is kind of bright, so I'll make this one quick. But what I do have is I have all the cataclysm bosses in containment jars, which are being farmed by Drigmies. And then I also have the Snow Queen on a stasis chamber, also being farmed by the Drigmies. So as long as I have source, these Drigmies will be pulling in all the boss drops that I will ever need for continuing on getting the stars. And then the last one, this one, I will give a huge shout out to John Hall, as he did release a video on this. However, this is only a very small version of his. His was massive, and I recommend you going to check it out. I will link his channel and the video in the description and the comments down below. I'll make sure I pin that comment too, so you guys have access to it. I highly recommend checking it out and checking out John. He is a great YouTuber and very knowledgeable modded Minecraft player. So the way that he showed this off, I'm not going to show you the whole setup for this, but I will show you what this can do, and it gets kind of wacky. So let me go ahead and flick this lever here, and yeah, it gets pretty wild. So this one I set up because I was struggling on getting apothic gear and also gems. So I set this one up, and the sword here has loot pinata, and it also has looting and scavenger, which allows the loot rolls to be rolled twice, and it just goes crazy. And then I have everything in here getting cycled around, so I have all the apothic gear coming over to the salvaging table, getting broken down, and then coming back into the chest. As you can see here, I have the pearls, I have the arcane sands and everything, and then I have all the apothic gems being taken out of this drawer or this chest and coming into this one. So I have like all the perfect gems, all the regular gems, the flawless gems, everything that I get from this farm goes into here. And then I have the little, the reforging table and augmenting table set up here for me to use. And if any XP gets dropped, of course this picks it up. However, that other mob farm that was meant for experience, the XP holder is actually this one. As you can see, this has almost 6,200 XP. Like I said, I highly recommend you go check out John's video because it is insane, and it makes an insane amount of XP as well, because he has it set up to where it does both. It does mob loot and it does XP as well, based on the mob loot, just like how the other one I showed you down below. So that will be it for the different mob farms for the different parts, whether it be for the mob loot or whether it be for the fluids that you are needing to progress with, say, industrial foregoing, or if you just need a ton of XP so you could get enchants or upgrade your apothic gear or gems, you'll have the ability to do that. So thank you so much for joining me on this one. All right, so I'll see you guys in the next one. All right, and here I am going to show you how I automated the Just Dire Things embers or fuel, however you want to call it. So the primal coal, the blaze ember, the void flame coal, and even the eclipse ember. This is my setup. You can pretty much have this however you want, but the way I did this was 3 of these are dedicated to turning regular blocks of coal into primal coal, and then the last 3 over there is for the blaze, the void, and the eclipse ember just to kind of like help things move along, because later down the line you're going to want the Eclipse Ember to make the Eclipse Ember fuel for part of the star quest. So I did this using a mixture of just dire things machines, and then also Super Factory Manager, which I will also show you as well. So let's go ahead and jump into everything that you're really going to need to start this. Okay, so you're going to need a couple of things, one of which, of course, you're going to need the goos. All of these are the Shadow Pulse goos. It just makes it a little bit simpler just to go up the chain instead of having to worry about each different tier. You're going to also need a way to transfer energy. You can do this one of two ways. You could either do the energy transmitter with a point, or if you have energy in your system, you can also set it up to where the Super Factory Manager pushes energy to each of these machines that it's connected to. So you could avoid using these and just use Super Factory Manager to export FE around. So I kind of have this showcase here twice. In here you can see every tick do input FE from interface. So the interface here, I have FE with an induction card. I also have it set to 1 million FE, just to make sure that these machines get enough and nothing has a bottleneck. And then from there, this was just to showcase you could also set it up this way to where you could have a couple of these machines running energy off of one energy transmitter and a flux point. I have 2 of these set up so that all 3 or all 6 pylons are taken care of with energy. However, again, if you're going to use Super Factory Manager, these are not needed. Just want to make sure that is clear. Okay, so the machines you're going to need are the Factory Manager, the Factory Manager program disk, some inventory cables, and a couple of fancy inventory cables if you want. It's not necessary. You could keep the normal inventory cables. And in order to get the fancy inventory cables, you could just throw the regular ones into a crafting slot, and that turns it into a fancy inventory cable. I do this just to, make this a little less bulky up on these pylons here. Of course, you're going to need an interface. Here I'm using the oversized interface. However, that is not necessary. You could probably get away with just using a regular interface. I just did this just in case. But you can see here I still have some slots left over on this first row, so that should be more than enough to handle the input. And then of course the ME wireless connector. This is not needed, however it does make this a lot simpler. You could of course run cables to your ME controller. Once all that is all good to go and your interface is online, you want to make sure if you are using the induction card and you have FE stored in your system, you will want to right click an item that has power onto this top square. This will allow you to set this to FE. Then of course we're going to need Skulk so that we could feed the Shadow Pulse goo. And then we're going to need each tier of the coal blocks, starting from the base form of block of coal, moving up to primal coal block, and then blaze ember block, and then the void flame coal block. And then the Eclipse Ember will just go straight back into the system, into the interface. So everything here gets used up, and then the final product, which is the Eclipse Ember, goes back into the system, which then allows you to set up another automation to turn that into its liquid form. So what I did was I just ran inventory cable along these machines, just like so. Don't worry about this portion. This portion is to turn the Eclipse Ember fuel into its liquid form. I am not going to go over this just yet because I still have some things that I got to work out on this. So I'm just mainly focusing on turning block of coal up to the ember, the Eclipse ember. So once you have the inventory cables ran for this, depending on how many of these machines and shadow pulse goos you want to use for this, more the better, of course. However, it is not needed. You could literally do just one for the conversion to primal, one for blaze, one for void, and then one for eclipse, and just let that run in the background. I wanted to speed this up, so I used 3 for the primal. And then the machines you're going to need are the advanced block placer, the advanced clicker, and the advanced block breaker. Now, a little note for the advanced block placer, you have to make sure you know exactly what direction you are placing this machine. So for this case, I placed this machine down facing east. So when you are doing the configuration, you want to make sure you change the direction to east. Otherwise, it will act kind of funky and place blocks where they don't belong. You also want to allow list the blocks that you want the coal to be placed against. So in this case, of course, it's the shadow pulse goo and the stone, because I have a stone in a cross pattern. And then I want to make sure that this top portion here gets placed as well for coal. So it will only recognize those 5 spots, and it won't try and fill up the open areas. For the advanced clicker, this one was kind of weird, but the way I have this set up is I have it highlighting the shadow pulse goo. And since I placed this down facing east, I had to make this look west for it to click properly and not place on the block. It was kind of weird. However, once I changed this to the direction of west, it worked out perfectly fine. This one does not need a filter list because it's only going to be one item, and you want to make sure that it is set up to right click and then target blocks. And then for the advanced block breaker, this one is quite easy to get, but basically you're going to allow list the conversion, which in this case it's going to be raw primal coal. So as soon as it converts, this block breaker will then break those converted items. Now, what one thing I do recommend for this is to use at least a Celestia Gem or an Eclipse alloy pickaxe or a Paxel. Now, in this case, I was using a pickaxe, and with the pickaxe, I have drops teleporter on. This will make your super factory manager code a little simpler, because then you don't have to tell it to input back into the system. What you can do is, if I move off of this, you can see that the oversized interface is a normal color, but when I bring out my pickaxe again, you can see there's a blue overlay. That means that anytime this breaks an item, it gets instantly transported to the interface, which then ultimately sends back into our system. So that kind of skips some line of coding, which makes this really simple. And the way I have this code, and I will place this down in the comments somewhere, or I'll have something situated so that you guys will have access to this code. But this is super simple. And for this, of course, there's the FE, so interface. So it's pulling the FE, or the energy, from the interface, and it's outputting to these different machines. And I wanted it to be broken up in a way that I could name these later on, or not name them, but use them in the lines of code later on for certain aspects. So a breaker is, of course, the block breaker, and then the coal placer, primal, blaze, void, etc. Now for the machines to be filled with skulk, what I did was, this is where I named them. So I have input skulk from interface. I'll put 1 to each clicker, and then I have it a forget, and then I have input coal block from interface. I'll put 5 to each coal placer. And so basically what that's going to do is it's going to fill the block placer with 5 coal. And then as soon as that gets the coal, it will start placing around the shadow pulse goo. And then it's going to basically do the same thing. So for the coal block, it's just going to be coal underscore block. And then for the different tiers, so like primal, blaze, and void, they're actually coal block underscore T1, T2, and T3 for tier 1, 2, and 3. So basically we have that going all the way up to tier 3 void placer, which means it's going to convert the void ember up to its block form and then get converted over to the eclipse ember. Once it gets converted over to the eclipse ember, like I said, these pickaxes will then just teleport all the items to the interface, and then it's basically a set it and forget it kind of thing. The only thing is you want to make sure you have a steady stream of coal that could get transformed into block of coal, because the moment you run out of coal, of course, it will stop running, which I mean isn't a bad thing because you don't need a lot of this eclipse ember, but you do need enough to be able to make the star. You need at least 16 buckets of the fuel, of the liquid formed fuel, and that's just for 1 star. And if you're looking to do the star AB, you're going to need obviously a lot more than that. So let me go ahead and show you what I mean by the directions. So I'm going to go ahead and place a shadow pulse goo here. And then you can kind of see I have an outline with stone, and then of course dirt and grass blocks. And I will show you that what happens when you place it in a certain direction, but you don't set it right. So let me go ahead and put down my block placer. Let me make sure that I get this in the right spot. There we go. Okay. So you can see I have it surrounded all the way around the shadow pulse goo and even out 1 so that it could recognize this front facing part. Now with this, I am facing west as I placed this block. And what's going to happen is if I will just go ahead and use the inventory cables for this. If I don't put any filtering or anything like that, it's just going to place it around and fill up this square entirely. So this is what happens when you don't filter and you don't have the directions set properly. It's just going to go around and fill up the entirety of this boundary box. So let me go ahead and take out the rest of this, and let me go ahead and not break it with that, but break it with this, because this has drop teleporters on it, and it will go back into my system. So what we want to do is we want to make sure that we do an allow list, and we add in stone. And of course, we want to add in the shadow pulse goo. And we could just drag that over from JEI. Now what this is going to tell it is to only put it on the stone and the shadow pulse goo. However, we still did not set the direction. And this is what's going to happen. And that's it. It may do something a little different for yours. It just really depends on how you place this block. But watch what happens when I change. Watch what happens when I change this from D as in down. As you can see, it reads as down to west. Okay, so we now have it on west. Now let me put the blocks in. As you can see, it is now only targeting the correct spots around the shadow pulse goo where we want them to be. So this is how you would want to have yours set up. You just got to focus on what direction you're placing the block placer down, and you're going to make sure you have that set properly right here in the directions list, just so that this works with no headaches, because trust me, figuring that part out was a major headache for me. Pull the rest of that out. Now for the advanced clicker part, since we placed this in the west, what's going to happen is it will feed it sometimes, but it will also place it down on top of it. You see it hold on, I gotta set the boundary for this again. Give me 1 second. Move this over. So we want it to be on the block and on the block only. So let me go ahead and place the skulk in, and I'm only going to do one. So you can see it did feed it. However, it will keep placing it on top. And we don't want that, because that's going to eat up an entire space, and it will leave you with only 4 instead of 5, and it will kind of slow your progression down for getting all the fuel. So let me go ahead and take those out and break that. Now, if I change this to west, what's going to happen is it's going to actually place it on this side of the block instead of where we want it. So let me go ahead and break this. So that means that we want this to go in through the back, which is the east, or the opposite direction of where we were facing. Now what's going to happen when we do this is, since there is no place for the block to go, it's not going to do anything until this is ready to be fed again. Now if I break this and drop it down, you could see it fed it. And again, since there's no, if I remove the block behind it, it will then place it. So you want to make sure you have a solid block behind your goo, and then it will be fine. Because if I go and I put one in here and I remove this dirt block, you will see it then places it. So we don't want that. We want to make sure that that stays covered. And we want to make sure that we have the proper filtering for the block placers so that everything works perfectly. Now, when it comes to the block breaker, this one is super simple. You could put this down anywhere. This one doesn't necessarily need a direction. And what we're going to do is we're going to bring this down, bring this over, and then we want to make sure we surround all sides that are going to have a block. Well, it's a little too big. And then go ahead and bring that back. Okay, so with the block placer, you want to make sure you have the boundary box one block out so that it could take care of this front block as well as all blocks on the side of the goo instead of just the side of the goo. You want to make sure this whole block is being taken care of since we're using all 5 sides. And so basically what I'm going to do is, if I go ahead and simulate having the blocks placed down, and since I have this set as an allow list for stone, since we're using stone, what this is going to do is it will then just focus on the stone surrounding the goo. As you can see, it is breaking it, and then it is waiting for more to be put in. So as long as you have the filter selected or filtered out correctly for what you are converting over, it will only mine those, and with the drops teleporter, it will then send it off into the system automatically. And that is how I was able to fully automate all the Just Dire Things fuel. It wasn't very hard. I think the hardest part about this was making sure that the directions were set properly. All right, so let's go ahead and move on to the next, and I will meet you guys in a different spot. All right, and I am back. And I know we didn't really move very far, but this one is going to be something that is actually pretty neat. So I used to have the Ars Nouveau Always Day and Always Clear ritual set up to where it would automatically sense if it's nighttime or if it's raining or thundering. Any time of that, it will switch it out and it will clear the weather up or make it daytime, so it'll always be day. So ever since the pack was updated to, I believe it was either 4.9 or 4.10, basically whenever the pack updated, when they dropped all the mods 10 to the sky out, they also added draconic evolutions, which actually allowed this whole progress to be even simpler. As long as you killed the Ender Dragon or you had draconic dust from something, you were able to actually make these items fairly easy, and you still can. So the items that I'm talking about are these celestial manipulators, and you're going to need 2 of them, along with some power. And for one side, you're going to want a wind vane, and then the other side, you're going to want a daylight detector. So to make the celestial manipulator, it's actually super simple. So if we go ahead and use JEI to look it up, we could see right off the bat, it does look kind of intimidating because you see different types of ingots, and you see this Draconic Evolutions core and dragon egg. But like I said, as long as you killed the Ender Dragon before, this stuff should be fairly easy. So to get the Wyvern core, you're going to need some draconium ingots, draconium core, and a nether star. So this does mean that you would have to at least kill the wither, or have them being farmed either through mystical agriculture seeds or hostile neural networks. So to make the draconic ingots, it's super simple. You're just smelting up draconium dust that turns it into draconium ingots. And to get the draconium cores, it's just more of the draconium ingots, gold, and diamond. And you're going to need 8 in total because you're going to need 2 wyvern cores. So once you have the 2 wyvern cores, you'll be able to make 2 of these celestial manipulators, because you'll need 2 wyvern cores, 2 dragon eggs, clocks, blocks of redstone, and iron. It's super simple to get going, and you can pretty much have this fairly quickly in your world if you are, rushing into the bosses, Ender Dragon, Wither, farming mystical agriculture, getting everything situated of that nature. This should be fairly easy. Now for the wind vane, again, it's just another easy craft. The wind vane is just 3 iron bars, a singular iron bar, which you could actually probably get in one of the dungeons if you're close by one, or maybe even a village. Sometimes they'll have iron bars, and you could pick that up pretty quick. And then redstone, and again, you just need 1 of these. And you could read here in the little box here, it says reacts to weather. So this is basically going to be for keeping your world clear from rain, thunderstorms, or anything like that. And then on this side, daylight sensor or a daylight detector, whatever you want to have it. But daylight detector is probably a little bit easier because it's just some slabs, nether quartz, and glass. And that's all you need just to make this. And you only need 1. So, and then of course you want to supply these with power just so that they work continuously. So if we come over here to the wind vane side, and you could see in the center, it is blue particles. If we go ahead and right click on this, it will open up the GUI. And this does kind of look a little, straightforward at times, or even sometimes it could look a little intimidating. Just really depends. But we're not worried about anything here on this portion of the GUI. Matter of fact, what we are mainly looking for is this redstone icon right here where it says configure redstone. We're going to click on that, and it'll open up this little menu. And for this side, you're going to want to select clear skies. Once you have that selected, you are done with this side. This will allow your world to be always clear from any weather type, and that side is pretty much all done and good to go. Now this side was a little more difficult. Not much, but a little bit, because you may have to come back in here and reset some things. But once you have it set and it's working properly, it will continuously work from that point forward. So what you're going to want to do is the same thing. You want to right click and open up its GUI. And then you're going to come back over to the redstone icon. Here, this is where you want to select sunrise. When you have this selected, you just click on it, then you should be good to go. So I'm going to go ahead and toggle this to go to night, and then we can make sure that this is working properly. And the way to know that this is working properly is when the blue particles turn yellow. So let's go ahead and change the day to nighttime. And you can see here it is turned yellow, and you could watch as it starts to move the sky and bring it back to day. Now the same thing goes for the weather side. If we go ahead and toggle rain, you will see that the particles now change and get more chaotic, and then it shoots out the blue particles into the sky. As soon as it does that, it zaps the rain away, and it also switches it from day, and it will cycle all the way through from night back to day. So now that we know that this is working properly, that is set up how it should be, and it will always work as long as you keep it supplied with power. So that is the Draconic Evolutions always day and always clear method. Definitely 100 times easier than going through the whole Ars Nouveau route. I will tell you that now. And it's less resource heavy. Also, one more thing I forgot to mention. When you place down the daylight detector, it's going to show kind of like this off-white color. You're going to want to make sure you right click on it, and it will be like kind of like this bluish color. You want it to be this color, because then it will detect when it goes nighttime. And this is also another great way to cycle through days, is turning that on and off. But you can see during the night it has power, which is sending redstone signal to the manipulator, and then as soon as the day hits, there's no more power in it, and that's exactly what we want. Alright, so that covers the Draconic Evolutions celestial manipulators. So let's go ahead and move on to the next. Alright guys, welcome back. And on to the next one. This one is probably by far my favorite one, because this allows me to speed up and tick accelerate as much as I want with no issues at all, especially since that I have the time crystals on an automatic rotation and automatically being farmed, which allows me to then set up this lovely little system. Now, this system, it is automated, but it is also set to manual. So you could do two things. You could either manually request X amount of buckets of time fluid to be created, or you could have it set up to where it will automatically be created and it will automatically fill up your time wand as you're using it. And I will go over that here shortly. So the machines you're going to need are a simple fluid placer, an advanced dropper, an ME pattern provider, an advanced fluid collector, and an advanced sensor. It's there at the bottom. And then, so pretty much with the simple fluid placer, you want to make sure you supply it with water. I shown this earlier, but underneath I have an internal water block. It is an amazing item to have. I just have it placed right underneath this machine, and it's constantly feeding it enough water. So then for the advanced dropper, I have this filtered for both polymorphic catalyst and time crystal, just like this. Just so it only drops these items in the correct order as well. And then for the render area, it's obviously just going to be this one small area. And then for the advanced fluid collector, I have it on an allow list with the time fluid bucket from Just Dire Things as the filter. So it won't pick up anything other than the time fluid. Now for the sensor, I have the sensor set up to an allow list of water and the polymorphic fluid bucket. So this will keep everything in order. And then of course I have a pipe coming from the advanced fluid collector to the pattern provider so that the time fluid could go back into my system. automatically. And that's pretty much it. I have the energy transmitter from Just Dire Things and a flex point from Flex Networks powering all these machines. And then I also have an advanced demagnetization coil, just so I'm not, anytime I'm near this area, I'm not accidentally picking up the time crystals or the polymorphic catalyst, because that will kind of hinder the progress or the process of making the time fluid. So that is, definitely necessary to have uh, if you have a magnet, of course. If you don't have a magnet, then don't worry about that too much. Again, that is only if you have a magnet. So if I go ahead and I come into my system and I look up time fluid, I could come here and I could craft, say, 10 buckets. I'm going to go ahead and stand back. And you can see it just goes through the process of creating the time fluid, and then it just goes back into my system. And you can see I'm currently at 120 buckets of time fluid. But yeah, no, once you have the time fluid in your system, the next thing that you would want to do is create an export card. This guy right here. And you will want to put this in your wireless terminal, because what this is going to allow you to do is when you put this in here, it will open up the export card button over here, which then you could add in the time fluid into this one slot or whatever slot you want. And then basically all of these down here in your inventory are going to be X'd out just like this. What you want to do is you want to match your inventory to the first, or to the slot wherever your time fluid is. So since this is in 1 and I want my time wand to be in this spot, I change this to a 1. I just left click and it changes to 1. Right click, it goes in reverse back to the X. So now that is on 1, I can move my time wand back into position. And then I also put an acceleration card in here so I can keep up with my constant spamming of this wand. But anyways, what this is going to allow me to do is if I come over here and just, time wand, you could see in my hotbar that it's constantly getting refilled. And that is exactly what that export card is meant to do. Now, with that being said, another thing that I do, just in case that for whatever reason that doesn't work, I constantly have time fluid in my system. So I usually set this up on an ME requester. What I would normally do is get my time wand, and you can see here where it says right click set time fluid. I'll right click into that space, and now I have time fluid here. Then what I would want to do is I want to make sure that I will always have 64 buckets in my system at any time. And then I click the little check mark to submit changes, and then I turn it on. Now, green bar means idling, but it also means good to go. There's if you hold down shift, it will give you kind of an idea of what each color represents. So idling, missing ingredients, no CPU, crafting, and exporting. Let me go back to over here. So to have this constantly work, you're going to want to set up the pattern for this. And the pattern is as follows. It's just 1 polymorphic catalyst and 1 time crystal makes 1 bucket of time fluid. And you want to make sure it's on processing pattern as well. And then once you have that, you just put it in here. Make sure that the pattern provider is pointing towards the dropper, because if it is not pointed towards the dropper and it is basically looks like this on all sides, it will try and push to the fluid collector as well, and it will just mess up the craft entirely. So you want the pattern provider to be pointed towards the dropper. You want to make sure you have the time fluid bucket on a allow list in the collector. You have the water set up. You have the dropper set up with the correct filters in the correct spot, just like this. And you should be good to go. Once you give it power, you can start requesting time fluid as long as you have the time crystals being farmed. yeah, since I have the time crystals being farmed, I didn't find it necessary to really make the time B. But again, that is just all preference. You know, the time B could be good if you don't want to set this kind of craft up. So in order to make the time B, you'll need to go through the whole Eclipse Alloy spawn egg, the Skulk B spawn egg, the Draconic B spawn egg. I just felt like this was a little too much, and I felt like me personally setting up the automation for the time crystals was just going to be that much easier, which I could definitely go over in my next tip on automating time crystals. So with the time fluid automation out of the way, I will go ahead and move on to the next one. I'll see you guys there. All right, and welcome to the last tip slash how to set up guide sort of thing that I'm doing. I will say, I'm not an expert by any means. A lot of the ones that I'm doing here today are kind of like the pain points in things that I had to figure out. And I want to make sure that I could pass along the knowledge that I learned so that you guys don't have to struggle like I did. And I hope out of any of these tips and tricks that you saw today, or any of the how-to guides, or any of the information provided helps you tremendously. I really do. I hope it does. And of course, if you guys know of anything that I've done that you can do in a better way, an easier way, please leave a comment down below. I will check it out. You know, I read everybody's comments, I reply back, and I appreciate all the advice that I get as well. You know, it means a lot to me because it means that I'm possibly doing something right with this thing. You know, sometimes I don't know half the time what I'm doing. So I appreciate you guys being sticking around and enjoying the adventure of, you know, this crazy guy doing crazy things. So what I'm going to do is go over my setup for automating time crystals. It's kind of an easy and simple setup, and it kind of plays off of what's already been done. However, the only difference is I have, you know, the energy transmitter powering everything here, including the growth accelerators that get popped in every now and then. So you're going to need 6 of these advanced swappers, which is 2 in each dimension. You're going to need 2 in the overworld here, 2 in the nether, and then 2 in the end. You're going to need 3 advanced sensors, and then 1 advanced block breaker. You're going to need 3 energy transmitters, along with 3 points, or if you're using the ender gates, 3 ender gates as well. Just really depends. I use a lot of points, so I use points, but if you use gates, you could definitely use gates. And then the way I have this set up is it encompasses the entire area here so that all 3 machines gets powered, and then when the time crystals come in with the growth accelerators, those growth accelerators get powered as well. I do have this on to bypass limit just so, you know, it gets full power all the time. Okay, so another thing you're going to need is you're going to need the ferrocore wrench, so that you could bind its location or link the location between swappers in the different dimensions. And how this is going to work is you're going to have 2 advanced swappers, and let me go ahead and remove that. So what you're going to do is for each advanced swapper, you're going to set up where your budding time crystals and growth accelerators are going to be. So here is where mine are. It is 1 block off the ground, and it is, I want to say, what is that, 7 blocks wide, because I have 3 budding time crystals, and each crystal has 2 growth accelerators attached to them. So I make sure every single one of these are all the same, As you can see, they're all within the same boundaries. And then each of the advanced swappers, they are on pulse mode, because the advanced swap or the advanced sensor is what pushes a redstone signal down to the swapper to enable it to go ahead and start swapping. So once you have that set up, you'll need to know what directions you have these facing. So I have them in this line, which is facing north and east. So you want to make sure you remember that. Actually, I'm sorry, north to south. You're going to want to make sure you remember the orientation of how you have these machines. They don't have to be, specific to what machine on what side. It just has to be specific to the cardinal directions, so north and south. And then what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that the machines are in the north and south orientation in each dimension. So if we come over here and we head over to the nether. So here in the nether is where I have it in the same orientation, north to south. And I have the two machines of the advanced swappers, and then I have the advanced sensor. And then of course I have this set up properly here as well. And then there's my energy transmitter and point that is powering everything as it comes through. So let's go ahead and move on to the end. And it's pretty much the same thing on how it's set up. But in the end, what we have here is the final resting spot until it gets recycled through. And this is where all the time crystals get mined. And so again, this is the advanced swappers, the sensor. This one is where I have the item collector and ender chest. However, if you get a advanced block breaker, you won't need the item collector, because you could do the drops teleporter on here, which then you could just right click onto the ender chest, and then it will automatically just send whatever it mines to that chest. So yeah, this is mining the crystals. And so now what I'll do is I'll go back to the overworld, or back to home, and explain this a little bit more in detail. So how this is going to work is the side with the sensor on top of it is the one that you want to link to the next biome. But before you do that, you want to make sure you set up the sensor correctly. So in the sensor, the way I have it, and it could be different for everybody else, but the way I have it is I have it set up to equals 3. So it has to sense all 3 and they have to all match. I have this on a allowed list for the budding time crystal block. This machine is to target the blocks. And I have it set to a weak signal. But what you want to do is you want to come here and you want to right click on this filter. It will open this little window here. And you want to make sure you set this stage to 1. What this is going to do is for stage 1, it will, once the conversion happens here in the overworld, it will then send it off to the nether to start collecting the energy there and convert to the next stage. So once you have that set up, and again, make sure you want to have your swappers on pulse. Deny list is fine, targets blocks for each one. But you're going to grab your ferrocore wrench and you're going to right click. You can see where it says bound to overworld and then the coordinates. Now what you want to do is head over to the nether where you set up your other advanced swappers and sensor, and you're going to right click on the lone advanced swapper, not the one with the sensor on top, but the one without it, just all by itself. But you want to make sure you right click on this, and you can see it says bound to overworld. So it will, as you just saw it quickly come in. So as soon as it hits the overworld, converts, it will come to the nether and it will convert, and then it will go to the end where it will then get harvested as it converts back into the stage 0. So here in the nether, how you want to have the advanced sensor set up is you want to make sure that this is on a stage 2. Again, I have this as equals 3, so it has to sense that each or all three of them are the same converted budding time stage. So each of them has to be stage 2 before it gets sent off to the end. Again, this is all set up the same: deny list, nothing in the filter, and pulse. And then here you want to click on this one. So it says bound to the nether. And then you want to go to your setup in the end. And here you'll want to have the one with the block breaker on top of it be the one to receive the next binding. So once you right click the one in the nether, you come over here and you right click this one. So those two will be linked, the one in the nether and this one in the end. All right, so once you have that done, you want to make sure you have everything for the block breaker set up. So I have this to filter item. It will only see the time crystals. So when these are ready to be harvested, it will harvest them. And you want to make sure you set that to an allow list. Also, I have this set to ignore, and directional for this does not matter. Just make sure you have this, the boundary box all the way around so it will see all sides that are required to be mined. And then over here for the advanced sensor, again, I have the allow list for the budding time crystal, and then I have this set again to equals 3. Now for this one, you want to set this to stage 0. Because stage 0 means overworld. So once these convert back to the original, it will then be sent back to the overworld to convert or start the whole process all over again. So once you have that one bound from the nether to this one, you're going to want to then right click this one. So you'll get this one and it will say bound to the end. And then you want to head back home. Once you're here at home, you'll want to come over to this lone advanced swapper and right click this one. This one should say bound to the end with the proper coordinates. And again, deny list, target blocks, pulse mode, and then that will be pretty much all set up. So once you have the machines set up and they're all powered, you could then get your time crystals set up. And remember, the only way you could really move them is with a cardboard box. So make sure you have a couple of those on hand, because if you try and mine it, it will just break and disappear. And what I can do is I could quickly go over on how to get the time crystal or the budding time crystal block. Let me see if I have any amethyst, which I do. So how this works is you want to get if you find yourself a geode of amethyst geode while you're mining, you want to make sure you take your goo with you, because what you're going to do is you'll grab your goo, put it against a budding amethyst, and then it will slowly convert. Once it slowly converts, you'll want to make sure you have some cardboard boxes on you so you can pick this up as soon as it does convert. But this will change into a budding time crystal block. So it's that easy to get. All you have to do is just find a budding amethyst, which they're pretty much scattered everywhere. So they should be fairly easy to find. You just need to have the goo to transform it into the budding time crystal block. And then you can set up your little time crystal farm. And that is how you automate time crystals. And this is the reason why I don't do the bees, the time bee, because that seems a lot more complicated than this was to me. And since I had this set up, time crystals are not an issue for me. And same with the time fluid. You know, I have 84,000 time crystals, so I have plenty of time crystals to make fluid. Again, it's just one crystal to one bucket of fluid, so I'm not worried with that. I know with the bee, you get both the time crystal and the fluid, and it may be beneficial to some and it may be easier to others. However, this was super easy for me to get situated and automated, so it's just something that I could set and forget. So again, that is how you automate the time crystals using the Just Dyer's Things machines and a little bit of AE2 and some Flux networks. So that is it for the how-tos and tips, except I do have a couple of bonus tips that I like to go over with you. If you find yourself out in the ocean, I highly recommend taking some swabs with you. And what I mean by swabs is it's just 2 wool and a stick. And it makes like a Q-tip looking like item. And what this will allow you to do is collect DNA from certain mobs. Now, the reason why I mentioned the ocean is because there is a mob in the ocean, tiny little mob. It's called a seahorse. This thing is powerful to put into a mob farm. As long as you could get the first heart of the sea, you can set up the seahorse in your farm and farm as many heart of the seas as you possibly can. Because all you need is just your first conduit and you're good to go. And you could do it through MA, of course, mystical agriculture. You could get heart of the seas, you could get the nautilus shells, you could do all that. But having looting, 2 different types of looting, because you could put up mob mashers, or you could do the advanced clicker and have looting on here. And then if you have looting on the apothic spawners as well, using the echo shards, you could only imagine the amount of heart of the seas you can get, which currently I have 9,000, which was more than enough for me. I wasn't going to need, 9,000 was even too much for me. But if you can make those conduits, that will help you progress further in your mob farms. The next bonus tip is the pylon and potion filter, which I have right here. So the infusion pylon is massively, massively OP, especially in all the mods 10 to the sky, because what you can do is you could actually put potion of flight onto a potion filter, which then will give you creative flight. And as long as the infusion pylon is in a force chunk loaded area, you will forever have creative flight anywhere in your world at any time. All you have to do is just double tap spacebar and you have creative flight. Now this thing is super powerful, like I said, even in all the mods 10 to the sky, because you're in a void, and it makes things building in the void so much easier when you could just fly around and not have to worry about any type of downward drop like with jetpacks, because in jetpacks, if you don't have a high enough level, you will start to slowly drop down on its own. But that's not the only thing you can do with that. With the infusion pylon, you could have many different potion effects, including one that is highly sought after in all the mods to the sky, or all the mods 10 to the sky, which is the nourishment effect. And the way you could get that is with vegetable soup or vegetable noodles. This one right here. As you can see, this gives you 5 minutes of nourishment, which then you could apply that to a potion filter. And when you get 60 minutes or like 1 hour worth of nourishment onto the potion filter, it will become unlimited. And when that becomes unlimited, you have full saturation as long as you don't take any damage. Once you take damage, you'll have to, manually bring your saturation back up. And then once it's back up, the nourishment effect will take back over. But you will not lose any health. You won't lose any hunger. You will be fully saturated as long as you don't take any damage. Super powerful. And then of course you have the other stuff like the strength, you have the haste, you have the regeneration, you have many other potions that you could slap into the infusion pylon, and it is super overpowered and highly recommended to start as soon as you possibly can, because this will only help you progress faster. All right, and for the last bonus tip that I have for you guys, this is going to be kind of like a twofer, and I absolutely love this. Didn't like the process as much because it took a lot of time, because it required this ritual from occultism, which is the max level ritual. Matter of fact, let me see if I can find my book here real quick. And it's the Dictionary of Spirits book is the one I was talking about, because what this will do is it will give you, if you come here to the pinnacles, you will see, if this is your first time getting the book, you will see this icon in the upper corner, but it will be red. You can unlock all of them so you could see it just like how you see mine. But this right here, the Fatma's incentivized attraction, is the one you want. But you have to kind of work through all of these because each chalk requires a certain ritual to progress further. But as long as you get to this one, you could then work on getting the 6-time Crusher Demon. I'll just come over here. So it's going to be this guy right here, which is a very fast crusher. And what he does is he will take any raw ore that you have. So like for instance, it's working on aluminum and copper. But what it does is it will crush one ore into 6 dust, which is 6 timesing all your raw ore. And it goes for the aluminium, vibranium, and unobtainium. It will do it 6 times as well, which is ancient debris. It will do the same thing. It will 6 times that. It will turn into the dust, which then will turn into scrap, and then you could turn the scrap into ingots if you want. But yeah, no, there's a lot of raw ore that it will do. So like the platinum, the silver, the tin, you know, the lead, the gold, the iron, copper, of course, and aluminum. And then, of course, the high-tiered ores as well. So it's highly recommended to try and, you know, get through occultism so that you could get the 6-time Crusher Demon. And then also, if you get far enough into Ars Nouveau to where you could get the Ritual Brazier, you could then get the containment spell, or the Tablet of Containment, and the containment jar, and then do the ritual to capture them into the jar. Once you have them in the jar, you could then just set it up kind of like how I did, where I have a pusher upgrade to push the raw ore into it, and then a puller upgrade to pull the dust from the demon. And then I have this set up to where, you know, in the mining dimension, I have a RF Tools builder mining out a very large section, which then will come in here, which I got to clean this up. Screwed that up in the mining dimension, but I'm okay for raw ores at the moment. But once it gets crushed into dust, I then have it come into the furnaces, get smelted down into the ingots, and then it goes right back into my system. So I have this kind of fully automated in a sense to where as long as my RF Tools builder is working, I will be getting ingots and scrap as well. So that was my last bonus tip for you. If you want me to go any deeper in any of the things that I've gone over today, please let me know in the comments down below. Also in the description and in the comment that I will be pinning to the top of this video, I will include my Discord channel. So if you guys want, you could feel free to join in, and you could reach out to me there as well. And then also, don't forget to smash the like button if you liked today's video. Don't forget to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next one. Goodbye.